Welcome to High Tech in the Heartland. I'm Bob Gough. I'm with Scott Richardson, my co-host on this podcast. We talk about all things tech and how they relate to the Midwest. And Scott is just kind of, he's really into this, but we're not trying to sell you anything, and he's going to tell you why.
I don't think we could afford to buy it, even if we were trying to sell it.
Gosh, no.
And being an attorney, I have to give my disclaimer, the first part. Even though people listen to my comments here, and I may say something having to do with legal advice, I'm not giving legal advice in this talk. And also, anybody that happens to be listening, this does not form a client-attorney relationship. You're not my client just because you're listening to this. And finally, I work for East Coast law firm Robinson Cole, and I'm not representing Robinson Cole here today with my remarks. I'm just a private citizen talking about something high-tech.
Having fun, talking tech, and we're going to talk about something that really pertains to the state of Illinois today, and that is quantum computing.
Quantum computing, yeah. It pertains to the state of Illinois because our fine governor and politicians have decided to invest immense amounts of money into this to build a quantum computing campus, a research campus up in Chicago on the shores of Lake Michigan. And they're spending something to the tune of $700 million to do this.
Scott, I don't know if you know this or not, but Governor Pritzker's not the most popular guy in this part. But, and my disclaimer, my son, of course, is the press secretary for Governor Pritzker. But this sounds really cool, and whenever I've talked to my son about it, whenever I've read about it, I think this is fantastic. And I think, if you're going to talk about government involvement in things, this sounds like a pretty good thing.
I like the nickname too. The official name is the Illinois Quantum and Microelectronic Park, IQMP, but the nickname is Quantum Prairie, and that's a takeoff of Silicon Valley.
Because we are, of course, in the prairie.
But, and I say $700 million, it sounds like a lot of money, but I mean, there could be huge benefits to be reaped here. And it's hard to say. There's so much hype in quantum computing, it's hard to say what's real and what's not.
I'm going to guess government can waste $700 million a lot worse ways.
Well, I'll tell you, government, the U.S. government is spending massive amounts of money, billions of dollars on this technology because it's drastically important to them for defense and for encryption purposes, like for communications. And also, Big Pharma is interested in this too, which, Big Pharma with deep pockets, because this type of computing can lend itself to modeling chemical reactions. And to be able to come up with the solution to a chemical reaction to do something without having to go through all the iterations and years of research, that's huge for the pharma industry.
So the layman's description of quantum computing is just really, really, really fast computing?
No,
it's more than that.
I know you asked that way because that's not the right answer, Bob. You can't really even compare a quantum computer to what's now called a classical computer. It's not just a faster supercomputer. In fact, it's not good at most of the things that a regular computer does. A quantum computer would be less able to perform many of the tasks that our laptops do than the laptops and the phones we have in our pockets. And first of all, you can't talk about a quantum computer without talking a little bit about quantum mechanics. So we're going to talk a little bit about quantum mechanics. And I have about this much of an understanding of quantum mechanics too. But a quantum computer the workhorse of the quantum computer is a qubit. And the workhorse of a classical computer is a transistor. Computers nowadays have millions of transistors in them. Quantum computers, the best ones now, have just 100 or a couple hundred, and also they're having problems with getting them to run long enough to maintain coherence long enough to actually finish what they're calculating. And I'm kind of getting ahead of myself.
Now, why is that? Is it because is it a power issue or?
It's an error issue because qubits have to be operated at near absolute zero, minus 273 degrees Kelvin, and very close to near absolute zero. In fact, if you Google quantum computer and you do an image search, you see what's called the brass chandeliers, and they're these big. Well, they look like a brass chandelier, and almost all of that is the cooling apparatus to keep the chip cool enough to maintain coherence. And when I say coherence, well, first of all, quantum computers have a couple of quantum mechanical attributes that are they're kind of bizarre, really, Bob. A qubit can go into what's called superposition. And like a regular bit, a transistor is either on or it's off. It's either a 1 or it's a 0. Mm-hmm. And a qubit can be both a 1 and a 0 at the same time, which is kind of hard to wrap your head around.
A little bit.
A little bit, yeah. And so for as long as they're computing, as long as they maintain coherence, they're in that 1/0 state. They're in that superposition state. And that's how they make their calculations, and that's why they're so efficient. And they're most efficient at the type of problems that are difficult to solve but easy to verify. And let's see, I should talk a little bit about quantum mechanics and how they came up with that. And I personally was introduced to it in junior high in my physics class, and our instructor had an excellent physics professor, or teacher, I guess you'd call him, not a professor
in high school.
In high school. But anyway, he talked about the double slit experiment. And in researching and looking into the double slit experiment, the double slit experiment was first performed clear back, 1801, 225 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah, but it wasn't performed in the manner it is today. But a fellow named Thomas Young, a researcher in London, used monochromatic light, and he had two screens. He had a back screen, and he had a forward screen, and it had two slits in it here. And then he shined this monochromatic light through the two slits, and the light, as the light came through each slit, it diffracted and spread out like that. And the spreading out light interfered with each other and produced a diffraction pattern on the back wall. In other words, a light and a dark strips back here where it was diffracting. Positive interference and negative interference. And so, okay, they concluded from that, well, light has the property of a wave. It has wave properties. And then fast forward 125 years, or about 110 years or so, to Albert Einstein. And Albert Einstein did some research with particles, and he found out that he basically was the discoverer of the photoelectric effect, which means that light is quantized. It has the effect of particles, and so they theorized that there was a wave-particle duality, that light sometimes acts like a wave, sometimes it acts like a particle, and the gist of it is it acts like a particle when it's at really small, photon size or particle size. But that's not actually true. It actually acts like a wave and a particle at particle size. And I'm going to get into that right now. And I know I'm being long-winded on this, but we're going to bring this whole tangent all the way around to the concept.
I'm bringing nothing to the table on here.
Of superposition. It's all going to come around to superposition. So anyway, fast forward another 60 years to the early 60s, and some scientists got the bright idea, and I don't know why they ever thought about this, but they replicated Thomas Young's experiment from clear back in 1801. They replicated it, again, shooting light through the wall with the two slits onto the back wall, except they did it one photon at a time. And why would you ever do this? I mean, because the thing is, all you're going to get is, two stripes of photons, right? Wrong. Actually, when you shoot one photon at a time, you still get the interference strips, the light and dark strips. If you shoot enough of them, it makes the same interference strips. In other words, this photon, even though only the photon is going through one slit, it's interfering with something. It's in a superposition state is what it is.
So,
isn't that odd?
It is very odd, but how does that get us back to this?
Well, that demonstrates the characteristics of superposition. This photon actually it's going through, it's not necessarily going through one slit. It's going through one slit, or it's going through the other slit too. It's in a 1 and a 0 state, just like a qubit.
Just like
Which is it's kind of hard to wrap your mind around that.
It is, yes. I agree with that.
But anyway, and also right now, from what I've read, it sounds like the development of, if you liken the development of quantum computers to the development of the hydrogen bomb, we're in about 1939 or 1940.
Oh, okay.
So we're well on the way.
We're close.
And we have a goal, and we've met some objectives, but there's some big hurdles in the way that they're trying to overcome. And also, there's not just one type of quantum of little particle. There are a number of different efforts to make particles.
Let's talk about how Chicago comes into play here, because you mentioned the atom bomb. Of course, Chicago had a role there.
Yeah.
With the University of Chicago in the development.
The first atomic reaction.
First atomic reaction was there, and then St. Louis had a connection with the Mallinckrodt Company. So we've had these. This kind of goes back to when this development happened, and now having this up in Chicago, which of course has, again, really good universities, really good research up there, and again, it's the third largest city in the country, so it should be a place where people would want to come and live and work on this stuff. Even though Chicago, yes, has its crime issues right now, you can still live in the burbs and commute in.
Especially that part of Chicago.
That's that part of Chicago.
It's not a nice part.
No, but I think that if you're going there and you're trying to build this campus, because I know there's a whole part of the whole innovation initiative that that the governor's trying to do. So, isn't this something though that is a great chance to bring in, the quote unquote best and brightest to work on this?
It seems like it is, and it's been fairly successful in attracting organizations so far. They have, I think there's somewhere around 15 or so quantum computing companies on that campus now, and that's about 10% of the quantum computing companies in America. Mm-hmm. I take that back. It might be in the world. There might be 150 in the whole world, and there's 15 in Chicago.
And again, for this to take place up there, just a short train ride from us, is really fascinating, and the fact that this could be this huge breakthrough that we're just waiting to see of how it's going to make our lives better, because we can't imagine, nobody could imagine the internet, cell phones, et cetera, 100 years ago, 50 years ago, well, maybe not 50, but 100 years ago, and now you get to this, and what sort of boxes can this open?
Well, like I said, it's not good at a lot of different things, but it's really good at a few things. It's good at modeling nature. It's good at modeling chemical reactions, things like developing new drugs. It's good at decoding and encoding encryption. And that's the reason the government's in it, is because of the encryption.
But I think when you talk about discovery and when you talk about innovation and you talk about science in general, how many daily aspects of our life were scientific breakthroughs that were accidental, that were we didn't know that was going to happen, but hey, that's pretty cool. I mean, the discovery of penicillin was an accident, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So when you explore, when you discover, sometimes the old adage, when you throw stuff against the wall, sometimes it sticks, and sometimes really good things can come of it. But if you don't try to take that step and make this happen, there is no discovery, there is no advancement.
Yeah, and also if you look at how technological advancement happens, it doesn't happen in the manner we think it's going to happen.
Not at all.
Because remember in the 50s, they were always talking, everybody's going to have flying
cars.
Where's
my flying car?
And where is my flying car? I want to see that. I've got a Dodge pickup truck, and it's on the street outside. It's not flying anyplace.
Exactly. I mean, when we all thought we were going to be the Jetsons, or we all thought it was going to be Lost in Space, and we were all going to be living on the moon and Mars by now, but we're not.
Now, the Jetsons, that really dates us, Bob, because you and I know what the Jetsons are, but there are a lot of people that don't know what the Jetsons are.
Yeah, no kidding. But I think you look at this, and while no, we don't have our flying cars and we don't have our condos on the moon, we've still got a lot of cool stuff that has happened in our lifetimes. And
unbelievable stuff, too. I mean, some of the things like who would have predicted that we would have cell phones in our pockets, mobile phones that could have vast amounts of information at our fingertips. We can answer a question in a minute that might have taken us a day's worth of research, just 30, 40 years ago. The
current iPhone has more computing power than the Apollo capsule did, or whatever. The Apollo rocket.
Way more.
In fact,
I think
space program.
Like the Apollo capsule had about the same amount of computing power as like a free calculator you get from the bank. That's about how much.
Yeah, the old TIs that you had to have in high school.
They show the picture of like control rooms, and they're sitting there with these giant consoles, and these CRT tubes, the green TTL tubes and everything.
Yeah, and now all that stuff is just like I said, it's in your pocket.
In your pocket,
basically. It's fascinating. So,
but I don't think quantum computers are going to be in your pocket anytime soon, because right now at least, they still have to cool these particles down to near absolute zero, which is just a huge undertaking. And the reason they cool them down to zero is they can collapse from the superposition state due to almost anything. Like if a cell phone transmission, if they get electromagnetic interference, they lose coherence and they quit computing. If a particle hits them, they lose coherence. I mean, almost anything can cause them and heat. That's the reason that heat causes them to lose the coherence too. That's the reason for absolute zero. So these huge brass champagne devices are actually they're for cooling and for shielding. They're like multiple layers of shields, and not just like Faraday cages are actually cages with you can see through them. I mean, probably the netting is big enough that a mosquito could fly through it. But these cages are solid containers because they're trying to reflect everything.
When you talk about having to achieve absolute zero and temperatures and things like that, it also has to factor in how much electricity, how much power it's going to take to do this too.
Yeah,
it's going to be a lot.
Point. It's going to take a lot of power.
And we are currently having all kinds of issues with our grid, whether it's the MISO, the PJM, and all trying to make sure we have enough power in our daily lives, and things like this consume a lot of power.
Yeah, I mean, that's a downside, but presumably the benefits will outweigh the disadvantages, so I don't know. And also there's so much hype in quantum computing, it's hard to know what's real and what's not. And one of the things that I was kind of buoyed up by was Microsoft's announcement earlier this year. They came out with a chip that is a small quantum processor, the Majorana 1. And it uses and also Microsoft is, like I said, there are about, I don't know, half a dozen different ways to make a qubit. And they're doing what's called a topological qubit, and it's a pseudo qubit. The gist of it is it's a very small nanowire, I forget, it's a few microns, like 3 or 4 microns long, and they have what's equivalent to half an electron at one end and half an electron at either. And because the half electrons are separated, if a particle does come in and hit that, or interference hits one, it doesn't cause both of them to lose coherence. One of them can go out and then come back on. And so it's a lot less prone to error. And I think, of all the different technologies out there, I think I like the Microsoft technology the best. That's the horse I'd be betting on right now if I was betting.
Oh, no
not
question
knowing
about it.
anything about it, just reading the press release.
No, they've got a pretty good track record, no doubt.
But no, Microsoft is doing it, and IBM is a leader. Amazon is in it, and Intel. All the big players are doing it. Plus another 150 or so companies that are dedicated to quantum computing.
Sure, and again, a lot of little ones, and whoever knows that one of those small companies could be the ones that just makes the discovery.
Who knows?
That's the thing. When you have enough people working on it, yeah, anything could happen. So the term qubit, wasn't that the measurement for the arc or something as well?
Yeah, it was, I think. Except that's CUBIT. This is QUBIT. So, but you're right,
okay.
qubits.
Yeah.
I forget, is a qubit, it seems like didn't they measure Goliath's height in cubits maybe?
I think so, yeah. And the arc, the measurement of the arc was in cubits too.
I always like turn to the back of the Bible, look at those old crazy old,
Yeah. Well, again,
measurements.
Not that we're trying to get into a religion thing here, but it's. I just thought that was fascinating, the use of those terms, even though they're spelled differently. But anything else you got for me today?
Well, there's so much about quantum computing, and I read a book on the topic. I was interested in it a while back, and I've just watched about every YouTube video that's available, but it's just, I feel like I'm just barely scratching the surface of this. And I think, I always say I'm not an expert in very many topics, maybe patent law, but maybe nothing else. But I would have to get a graduate degree to become an expert in this topic. Well, and even then, I might not be an expert.
Well, I think the fact that this is just, again, pretty much in our backyard where where the state is trying to make this the real hub for, if not the country, the world in doing this, I think that's pretty cool.
And I didn't want to come off too negative about the Quantum Prairie up in Chicago, because I'm a little shocked at the sticker. I have sticker price shock, but I think it's a wonderful thing that we're taking the lead and the initiative and actually trying to attract all these companies and all this research up there.
Yeah, but like I said, the government, state and federal, they waste $1 billion a lot of different ways.
Oh yeah,
and I don't think this is a waste at all.
Well, it's better than wasting it on putting transients in hotels. Illegal immigrants in hotels.
Yes, I think that
I'd rather spend $1 billion on this than $1 billion on that.
Yeah, I think that this is actually a good use of state dollars. So, well, Scott, as always, these are interesting, they're fun, they're fascinating, and I look forward to our next chat.
Great.
Once again, thanks for watching High Tech in the Heartland. I'm Bob Gough.
I'm Scott Richardson.
And we'll see you next time.